I know you can't really see it in the video, but it is important to me that you know that I am wearing a Buzzfeed Unsolved shirt. This week on my channel, we investigate the authorial debut of Shane Madej and Ryan Bergara into our ongoing investigation into the question, are ghosts real? Today, I will be reviewing Buzzfeed Unsolved Supernatural, 101 True Tales of Hauntings, Demons, and the Paranormal. On February 4th, 2016, a new series debuted on one of BuzzFeed's YouTube channels. Unsolved, the brainchild of Ryan Bergara, began with an investigation into the mysterious death of the Somerton Man as their first episode. By December, Shane Madej took over Brent Bennet's role as co-host, and thus began a harmonious dynamic of spooked subscriber and unspooked skeptic. A dynamic that no one could have predicted would span approximately 120 episodes of investigations into true crime and supernatural phenomena, before branching away from BuzzFeed with the creation of their own company, Watcher Entertainment, where they continue to entertain the question, are ghosts real? Despite the duo's final episode with BuzzFeed premiering in late 2021, the Ghoul Boys are back for one final hurrah under the Unsolved name, to give us 101 true tales of hauntings, demons, and the paranormal. And like, as much as I fucking love Unsolved, when is BuzzFeed finally going to cut the puppet strings? Like, damn, let these boys live! Which leads us to September 2022, with the official publication of the Unsolved book. Before we get into the official review, I would like to note that while this video is not monetarily sponsored in any way, I did receive a copy of the book to review from Novel Suspects. But now, let's get to the synopsis. The book itself is broken down into different chapters, and within each chapter there are a variety of different cases discussed that fall under the theme of each specific chapter, including haunted houses, hellish hotels, eerie institutions, devilish drinkeries, grisly grounds, nautical nightmares, scary cemeteries, paranormal paths, and ghostly towns. The format of the cases themselves is very, very reminiscent of the video episodes of Buzzfeed Unsolved, where we are presented with factual evidence of what happened, some suspected theories of what might have possibly been the cause or the outcome, intermixed with personal and sometimes comedic commentary from Shane and Ryan. The book seems to be about 50-50 split, with new content and locations that we have never seen from Unsolved before, and some cases that have already been discussed and investigated within the videos. So some of it is stuff that if you are familiar with their channel, you will definitely already be vaguely familiar with the cases, but some of them are entirely new and will hopefully be fun new information for you guys to read. There was less information, however, presented within the book than was in the show. So I was a little bit disappointed with just the level of the, like, depth of the investigation. Most of the cases only featured about 2 pages per case, so we really didn't get much expansive information. It was very much kind of just like the highlights of the case and bare bones information. A lot of it definitely was not necessarily backed by a historical record either. Not that everything in the show was, obviously, like with all of these historical and potentially haunted locations, a lot of their history is definitely very speculative and told by word of mouth. There's not necessarily historical records for everything, but you could really tell in the book, whereas just like it was often enough to be very, very notable, whereas in the show, since each video is only one case, it's definitely less noticeable when that happens. I definitely would have assumed that with a book, we would have been able to have gotten a lot more direct information about each of the cases, but we really didn't get too much, and I'm not sure if there just isn't that much information to get about a lot of the cases, or perhaps 101 different locations was just a few too many to feature in one specific book. At least if you were looking for particularly expansive information. If you are just here for like Ryan and Shane's commentary, you definitely get plenty of that. So if you're like, I would definitely say that the book is more ideal for fans of Buzzfeed Unsolved, for Shane and Ryan specifically, versus people who are actually looking for expansive information or like actual paranormal research, because it is definitely more the former. However, with all of that said, like I had mentioned before, about half of the book are entirely new cases that we have never seen discussed on Buzzfeed Unsolved, which is very, very fun to have that much new content. And even with the videos that were covered in their own episodes, in some of them we do get new information that wasn't presented in the video from the chapters in the book. And it definitely doesn't feel this, like, it doesn't feel like they're just reusing information from the investigations, because it's not at all the same commentary or anything like that. We get completely original commentary, and on a lot of the ones that were featured as investigations, we actually get like background information and commentary about the investigations themselves. Ryan and Shane definitely have a lot of quips about their experiences behind the scenes that we would have had no idea about because they're not featured within the video. Like, for example, I would have never known that there was an episode where Shane almost shit himself on site because the crew was left with airport hot dogs and he took the leftover spicy ones. Not something I needed to know, but certainly something that I now do know. If you are here for more educational purposes and trying to gain information on these cases, I would be lying if I said that there weren't some that were a little bit hard to actually ingest and read, simply because some of them had so many commentary interruptions, it was a little bit difficult to follow the case itself. Obviously, you could definitely just like go through and read all of the evidence itself and then save the commentary for afterwards, and that would lead a much smoother reading experience for some chapters. And certainly not all of the cases are like that. It's definitely not majorly consistent, but again, enough to be noticeable. Some chapters have like expansive commentary from Shane and Ryan, where some barely have any. And as much as we love the comedic factors of the commentary, the cases themselves are much easier to follow the less there is. So you may want to experiment with how exactly you read the format yourself if you decide to read it for yourself. Shane and Ryan are definitely as funny as ever within the book. Like, obviously the commentary isn't going to be quite as organic as it was in the videos, but that's because it's an entirely different medium. You know, it's going to be a little bit different, obviously, but they're absolutely as funny as ever, and I very consistently laughed out loud throughout the entire book. So you definitely know that you're going to be getting the same chaotic energy and vibes that you get from the TV show. However, one thing that I do want to note is the fact that I don't think Shane or Ryan wrote any of the actual evidence behind the cases, based on a lot of comments that they made within their commentary and something that Ryan had said in his like acknowledgements page at the end, and the fact that on the inside pages of the book it says that it's written by Shane Madej, Ryan Bergara, with Anna Katz. I actually believe that this person, Anna Katz, was the one who compiled and wrote the evidence parts of the cases, and that evidence was presented to Ryan and Shane for them to make their commentary about. So I do feel like the way that the book was marketed was a little bit misleading, because obviously it's very much something that you think Shane and Ryan entirely wrote, and that's definitely not necessarily the case. And like, that doesn't negatively affect the book at all. Like, I still absolutely enjoyed the book. I think it's a fantastic read. I do just think that some people may be a little bit disappointed by that, and it's entirely the marketing fault. Like, it's not, you know, obviously, like, it's not required that Shane and Ryan wrote the entire thing. They're just not fully explaining what exactly the book is. So just be aware of that if you are looking for a book that like sounds like it's completely in their voice. It's not necessarily. Not that the evidence is bad in any way. And in fact, it's actually funny because the further along you get in the book, the more sarcastic the author of the evidence gets. Like, the first few chapters, it very much starts very, very seriously with everything presented in a very, very educational and historical manner. And the further throughout the book you get, the more sarcastic and witty and just playful the author gets. You can definitely tell that they got more comfortable the further they got within the book. And you can definitely tell that, like, the commentary of Ryan and Shane play off of that a bit as well. And it's a very, very fun little dynamic to read. But again, you know, it's very much not something that you should expect a huge amount of paranormal education from. Like, it's very much more entertainment based, and that's not exactly what I was expecting when I heard that it was supposed to be like these true tales about demons and hauntings and paranormal evidence. Again, not that that's a bad thing, just not what I feel like anybody is going to assume coming out of it. So if you're reading it for yourself, just be aware that it's less serious than many other books in this field. But again, that's not a bad thing. And I definitely think that that's something that the field of paranormal research definitely needs. Like, some people just take themselves entirely too seriously. And while in some cases that is useful and beneficial, a lot of the time it would be so much more palatable if you were able to joke about it and not take yourselves and these cases too seriously, especially the ones that are more silly. Like, obviously there are some very, very serious and sensitive subject matters featured within the book, as is with the show, but there are certainly different elements, particularly on the more paranormal side of things, where you should be able to laugh at it, you know? And like, so many shows would be so much better if they were able to laugh at it, and like, so many books would be so much better. So I'm very, very glad that we are presented with that opportunity within this book. It's just not the most educational that like the genre has to offer, you know? I also did want to note that it's very, very clear that whoever did write the research portions of the book is very, very socially aware and sensitive in a positive way, especially when it comes to historical context, because you can particularly tell when the book discusses sex workers and enslaved people, and the language that's used surrounding those topics is very, very, I feel like, just very, very respectful of the subject matter and the people who are involved in it, which is very, very delightful, because that's not at all something that we really get to see in pieces that discuss historical events and topics. And I think it's very, very necessary. Like, I'm personally not the biggest history person, but I am very, very excited for pieces that discuss history that are coming out at this point in time, because I definitely hope that it follows this trend of this book, where it gets so much more respectful and acknowledges the horrors of the history while not trying to gloss over them either. So I do really, really love that from the historical standpoint, and just like the respect that it gives to the subject matter. In certain aspects, there are certainly a lot of things that are very joked about, but not in a way that I feel like anybody's going to be really offended by them. Maybe a few things, but not in like super serious aspects. Like, it's very much going to depend. Like, there is a little bit of dark humor featured throughout the book, but not dark humor in the sense that like people use that as an excuse to just be fucking hateful. Not at all. Like, it's just genuinely like kind of quirky dark humor, you know? And that's not even like a major feature of the book. There are just a few comments here and there where it's just like, oh no, kind of vibes. But no, overall, the book is definitely fantastic. It was a very, very enjoyable read, especially if you are looking for more content from the Ghoul Boys themselves. But again, it's not necessarily going to be your go-to if you are looking for fully researched and fledged out informational pieces. But if you just want more of Ryan and Shane and more of the Buzzfeed Unsolved vibes, because this is allegedly the last piece that we're going to be getting under the Unsolved name. I mean, obviously, like, on their YouTube channel, other people from BuzzFeed have, like, kind of taken it over. Nobody's watching it, though. Because we can still watch Ryan and Shane on Watcher and all of their new business things. But this is the last thing that we're getting with those two featured under the Unsolved name. I would definitely love to see another book from them in the future that was more specifically written by them and less commentary. And if I'm being honest, like, I would have been curious to see different iterations of this book. I think it could have been fun to see it more expanded on in the cases themselves, but I also think it would have been more fun to have gotten a little bit more commentary from Shane and Ryan as well. I think the ultimate quote-unquote issue with the book is that there are just so many different cases featured. Like, there are 101 cases featured within like 200 and something pages. So it's really not particularly expansive. And I think that might have been a little bit to the detriment of the book. I think we could have certainly gotten different if there had been less cases featured. It could have been more educationally and commentary expanded on, which I would have liked to have seen, but for what it is, I definitely think it's fantastic. It was so fucking funny. Like, I cannot express how funny it was. I mean, similarly to show, if you're familiar with the show, you know that, like, Shane and Ryan as individuals are just very, very funny people. And I was very thrilled to see that the book maintained that. Perhaps not quite as much as a lot of the show did, but again, different mediums are going to be presented very, very differently. For as much as it was similar to the format of the show, obviously it's going to read quite literally a little bit differently. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a blast hanging out with y'all. Peace.